Welcome to another episode of Myths for Sleep, where the gods have more relationship drama than the Bachelor franchise combined with Love Island, and their love stories make Romeo and Juliet look like a casual Tinder hookup that went surprisingly well. Tonight, we're diving into a tale so heartbreaking that it made the literal god of death shed tears. And trust me, Hades doesn't cry at rom-coms, sad puppy videos, or even those commercials with soldiers coming home to surprise their families at Christmas. This is the story of Orpheus and Eurydice, starring the world's first supernatural rock star and his Instagram-perfect wife, featuring a supporting cast of incompetent gods, one sexually aggressive beekeeper, and a three-headed dog with serious boundary issues, and what appears to be the ancient equivalent of multiple personality disorder. Think of it as the ancient Greek version of A Star is Born, except instead of Bradley Cooper's questionable singing voice, we get actual magic music that can literally move mountains. And instead of a tragic ending involving addiction and industry pressures, we get a tragic ending involving divine bureaucracy and really poor impulse control at the worst possible moment. Before I get lost in the underworld like our musically gifted hero with questionable decision-making skills and an apparent inability to follow simple instructions, if you're new to the channel and enjoying these stories, help me out with that like button that's more stubborn than Hades' refusal to give up dead people, or Zeus trying to explain to Hera why he was just helping that mortal woman who's now mysteriously pregnant. But if you think these stories are more tragic than a Netflix series that gets cancelled after one season just when it's getting good, tell me how I can improve. I make these videos for you, not to satisfy my own weird obsession with ancient Greek therapy sessions gone horribly wrong. Subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell like you're Orpheus trying to wake the dead. Spoiler alert, it doesn't work. And tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is there. But wait, it gets better or worse, depending on your tolerance for cosmic irony. This is also the story of how the gods invented the most psychologically sophisticated form of torture ever devised, giving someone exactly what they want, while ensuring they'll never be able to keep it. It's like winning the lottery, and then discovering the ticket is printed in disappearing ink, or getting your dream job, only to find out your boss is a sociopathic micromanager with trust issues and a god complex. Literally a god complex, in this case. From now on, you are a dream traveler, capable of journeying through time to witness up close the comedies and tragedies of Greek mythology. You can feel tastes, smells, textures, and even hear the gods gossip, which, by the way, is way better than anything TMZ has ever reported, and significantly more petty than your average high school drama. But you can never intervene, no matter how much you want to shake these people and yell make better choices, or read the fine print. If you're not lying down, that's fine, but if you are, close your eyes, because your journey begins now to witness the most expensive music lesson in history, one that proves even gods can be moved to tears by really good elevator music, and that the most beautiful love stories are often the ones with the worst endings. You'll walk through gardens where music literally rewrites reality, taste wine that's basically liquid happiness with notes of starlight, and witness a man so devoted that he was willing to face the cosmic equivalent of trying to return something to Amazon after the warranty expired, except instead of dealing with customer service, he's negotiating with death himself, and instead of wanting a refund, he wants his wife back from the great beyond. I always wonder if I'm helping people fall asleep at 3 a.m. in Miami while questioning their life choices, or if someone's watching this during a boring Zoom meeting in London while pretending to take notes on quarterly projections when they're actually learning about ancient Greek relationship disasters that make their own dating life look relatively functional. Hell. Chapter 1. The musician of the gods. Picture this. You're standing in ancient Thrace, which is basically Greece's version of Nashville, except instead of country music about pickup trucks and heartbreak, everyone's obsessed with lyre music about heartbreak and occasionally pickup carts. And instead of cowboy boots They wear togas that constantly need readjusting, because apparently the ancient Greeks never figured out how to make clothing stay put during normal human activities. You hear the most incredible music ever created. Not "this is my favorite song and I'm going to play it 17 times in a row" incredible, but this music is literally rewriting the laws of physics and making Isaac Newton's future theories cry with inadequacy incredible. This is Orpheus playing his lyre, and he's basically what would happen if Ed Sheeran, Beethoven, and a Disney princess had a baby who was also part god and had access to the kind of auto-tune that works on reality itself. When this guy plays music, wild animals don't just gather around like they're at some hippie music festival where everyone forgot to bring chairs. They form actual orderly queues with better organizational skills than most government agencies. Lions sit politely next to deer and discuss the weather. Wolves make small talk with sheep about current events, and bears start offering to help with parking and providing directions to the restrooms. It's like the world's most effective anger management class, taught by someone who can literally tune the universe like it's a slightly out-of-key guitar. The crowd control at Orpheus concerts is unprecedented. You've got predators and prey sitting together like they're at a company picnic, where everyone's temporarily forgotten about office politics. Birds of prey perch next to songbirds and exchange recipe ideas. Even insects show up, not because they're attracted to lights or food, but because they genuinely enjoy the musical experience and want to support local artists. You watch as this impossibly talented musician receives his golden lyre from Apollo. And this isn't just any gift. This is like getting a sports car from your rich uncle. Except the sports car can control reality. Your uncle is the god of music, poetry, and looking absolutely fabulous while doing archery. And the car comes with a warranty that covers interdimensional travel and minor miracles. Apollo basically hands it over and says, "Here, son, try not to accidentally start any cults with this thing, and please don't use it to settle neighborhood noise disputes." The lyre itself is a work of art that makes Stradivarius violins look like toy instruments from a dollar store. It's crafted from materials that don't exist in the mortal world, strings made from crystallized starlight, a frame carved from wood that grew in gardens tended by immortals, and tuning pegs that were probably blessed by every muse during a particularly productive team-building retreat. When sunlight hits it, the instrument doesn't just gleam, it practically sings on its own, harmonizing with the background music of the spheres. Orpheus doesn't just inherit talent. He's the kind of overachiever who gets a perfect instrument and immediately thinks, "You know what this needs? Modifications." So he adds 2 extra strings to his 7-stringed lyre, making it 9 total, 1 for each of the muses. It's the ancient equivalent of buying a Tesla and immediately voiding the warranty by installing rocket boosters, except somehow it actually makes the car better, and doesn't result in any insurance claims or awkward phone calls with customer service. His family tree reads like a who's who of artistic excellence. His mother, Calliope, was the queen of the muses, which means he literally has divine artistic inspiration hard-coded into his DNA. Family dinner conversations probably went like this. "How was school today, honey? Oh, I accidentally made a mountain move 3 feet to the left with my homework assignment, and I think I may have accidentally invented a new form of poetry that makes people weep uncontrollably." "That's nice, dear. Just remember to put the mountain back when you're done, and maybe tone down the emotional impact of your poetry assignments. We're still getting complaint letters from your last performance." Apollo, his divine father, looked at his son and thought, finally, someone who gets it. Someone who understands that music isn't just entertainment. It's a fundamental force of the universe that can be weaponized for both good and evil, though mostly we'll stick to good because evil music tends to attract the wrong kind of attention from the other gods. You feel the warm Mediterranean breeze as Orpheus practices by the riverside, and his music doesn't just sound beautiful. It tastes like your favorite dessert, mixed with the first day of vacation. That feeling you get when you find money in your jacket pocket, and the satisfaction of finally understanding a joke that everyone else laughed at 3 weeks ago. The 9-stringed lyre produces sounds so perfect that even the gods occasionally stop their eternal bickering about property lines, and who's responsible for natural disasters to listen and think, okay, maybe mortals aren't completely hopeless after all. But here's where it gets really ridiculous. Trees start uprooting themselves to get closer to the music. Not in a horror movie the forest is attacking, and we need to call an exorcist way, but more like plants suddenly developing FOMO and deciding they need better seats for this concert. Ancient oaks that have stood rooted in the same spot for centuries suddenly think, you know what? I've been growing here for 400 years, maintaining the same view, following the same routine, but this music is worth risking everything for better acoustics and possibly a career change. Rivers change direction, flowing uphill if necessary, because apparently even water has music preferences and isn't afraid to defy gravity to pursue them. You're witnessing the laws of physics taking a coffee break because they're too distracted by really good tunes to remember what their job responsibilities are. Gravity itself gets so caught up in the melody that it occasionally forgets which way down is supposed to be, leading to some very confused wildlife and a few minor geological rearrangements. The rocks, literal stones, the most emotionally unavailable objects in existence, beings that have spent millions of years perfecting the art of not caring about anything, start crying, not metaphorically, but actual tears of pure crystalline water running down granite faces. It's like watching the world's most dramatic therapy session, where even geological formations are having emotional breakthroughs and discovering feelings they didn't know they had. I never realized how much I've been holding in for these past million years. I have so many feelings about erosion and weathering patterns. Mountain streams redirect themselves toward the sound, and you can taste the magic in the air around him, sweet like ambrosia mixed with honey, complex like aged wine that's been personally blessed by Dionysus, with undertones of this, is definitely going to end in either spectacular triumph or cosmic disaster, and probably both simultaneously. Orpheus doesn't just play music, he's basically a DJ for reality itself, mixing tracks from the fundamental forces of existence, like he's working the crowd at the universe's most exclusive nightclub. When he plays sad songs, flowers close their petals and start grief counseling groups for other plants. When he plays happy tunes, fruit ripens instantly, and the sun shows up to work early, excited about overtime pay and the chance to really show off its lighting skills. His music becomes the ancient world's first viral phenomenon, except instead of spreading through social media, it spreads through the actual fabric of reality. Shepherds abandon their flocks to follow the sound, which creates some logistical problems, but also leads to the world's first impromptu music festival. Even philosophers stop arguing about the nature of existence long enough to listen, which is unprecedented, because philosophers arguing is one of the most reliable constants in the universe. Chapter 2. The Impossible Love. Now you find yourself at what should be the wedding of the century, the kind of ceremony that would make modern wedding planners weep with envy and immediately question all their career choices. But it's also about to become the most cursed matrimonial ceremony in mythological history, which is saying something considering that Greek mythology is basically a collection of stories about how everything that starts well ends in disaster, usually involving at least one angry god and several questionable decisions. The scene is so picture-perfect it makes Pinterest wedding boards look like they were put together by amateurs with no imagination and limited access to magical creatures. Orpheus stands at the altar with the altar, and she's not just beautiful, she's make other goddesses consider plastic surgery, and maybe a career change gorgeous. We're talking about beauty so profound that it temporarily breaks people's ability to form coherent sentences or remember their own names. Eurydice is a wood nymph, which in ancient Greek terms means she's basically a supernatural influencer whose brand is being impossibly beautiful while living in perfect harmony with nature and making everyone else feel inadequate about their skincare routine. Her morning routine probably involves waking up perfectly tanned without any sun exposure, having birds braid her hair while she hums songs that automatically become top 40 hits, and accidentally causing flowers to bloom just by walking past them at normal human speed. She's the kind of beautiful that makes people write terrible poetry and start forest conservation movements, just hoping to catch a glimpse of her during her afternoon walks. Her Instagram account, if she had one, would have more followers than there are stars in the sky, and every selfie would look professionally lit, even when taken with ancient Greek technology, which is to say, mirrors made of polished bronze that barely reflect anything accurately. You can smell the wedding feast, and this isn't your typical church basement reception with questionable potato salad and a cash bar run by someone's uncle who took a bartending class once. We're talking ambrosia that makes Gordon Ramsay's cooking taste like gas station snacks that have been sitting under heat lamps for 3 weeks, honey cakes that are basically edible sunlight with notes of liquid happiness, and wine so good that even the gods show up uninvited hoping for leftovers and maybe doggy bags. The wedding venue itself is a forest clearing that has spontaneously decorated itself for the occasion. Flowers have arranged themselves into perfect bouquets. Trees have grown into cathedral-like arches, and even the rocks have somehow managed to look festive, which is impressive when you consider that rocks don't typically have much fashion sense or experience with event planning. The guest list reads like a who's who of mythological beings, who usually don't get along but have temporarily set aside their differences for really good food and entertainment. You've got nymphs who could be supermodels if they weren't busy being mythological entities, satyrs providing the entertainment, and probably spiking the punch with stuff that's technically legal, but definitely shouldn't be. And trees that have literally uprooted themselves to attend because they don't want to miss the social event of the millennium. Even the local wildlife has dressed up for the occasion. Deer are wearing flower crowns. Birds have coordinated their singing into a choir that would make Broadway directors weep with envy, and the butterflies have organized themselves into living decorations that flutter in perfect synchronization. It's like Pinterest and Disney had a baby, and that baby was raised by forest spirits with unlimited budgets and really good taste. It should be the perfect fairy tale ending, except this is Greek mythology, where happy endings are rarer than Zeus keeping his marriage vows, Hera being chill about literally anything, or Poseidon not causing natural disasters because someone forgot to sacrifice the right kind of fish to him. The universe has a strict no happiness without cosmic consequences policy, and someone clearly forgot to read the terms of service when they planned this wedding. Hymenaeus, the god of marriage, shows up to officiate, and this should be excellent news. He's literally the divine wedding planner, the cosmic expert on making relationships work, the guy whose job it is to ensure that till death do us part actually means something positive. He's got thousands of years of experience and a perfect track record, at least with couples who follow his advice and don't try to negotiate with cosmic forces. But there's a problem that would make any modern bride demand a full refund and negative Yelp reviews. His wedding torch keeps sputtering like a cheap lighter that's running out of fluid, or like a car engine that's trying to tell you something important about your transmission before it dies completely. In divine symbolism terms, this is like having your wedding cake collapse during the cutting ceremony, the rings spontaneously tarnish and turn your fingers green, and all the flowers wilt simultaneously while the photographer's camera catches fire and the DJ's equipment starts playing funeral marches instead of celebration music. The gods are basically live tweeting that this marriage is doomed, posting cosmic red flags that are visible from space and probably from several alternate dimensions. But everyone's too drunk on love and actual wine that's been blessed by Dionysus and probably contains ingredients that aren't technically legal in the mortal world to pay attention to the supernatural equivalent of Houston. We have a problem, and by problem, we mean your entire life is about to become a cautionary tale. The torch keeps guttering and smoking. filling the air with an acrid smell that makes everyone's eyes water and creates an atmosphere of unease, even in the midst of what should be pure celebration. It's like having a smoke alarm go off during your anniversary dinner. Technically not dangerous, but definitely ruining the mood, and making everyone wonder if they should be concerned about something they can't quite identify. But Orpheus and Eurydice are having that honeymoon phase where everything seems perfect and minor inconveniences feel like charming quirks, rather than ominous warnings. They're so in love they probably think the sputtering torch is romantic ambience, and the ominous omens are just the gods being quirky in that way that immortal beings sometimes are when they're trying to add character to important events. They exchange vows that are so beautiful even the cynical immortals in attendance start believing in true love again, despite having witnessed literally thousands of relationships crash and burn in spectacular fashion. The promises they make to each other are so heartfelt that even Aphrodite, who's seen more love stories than a romance novelist with insomnia and a serious coffee addiction, wipes away a tear and thinks, maybe this time will be different. Maybe these two actually have what it takes. The ceremony concludes with a kiss that's so perfect it temporarily stops time, makes flowers bloom out of season, and causes several nearby immortals to remember what it felt like to believe in happily ever after. For just a moment, everything in the universe feels right, balanced, and full of infinite possibility. The days following their wedding are pure Instagram perfection, the kind of domestic bliss that makes other couples either deeply inspired or slightly nauseous with envy. You follow them through their garden paradise, watching them live like they're in a commercial for organic honey, artisanal bread, or whatever product is marketed to people who have achieved perfect work-life balance and never argue about whose turn it is to do the dishes. They share fruit that tastes like concentrated happiness, figs that burst with the flavor of perfect summer days when you have nowhere to be and nothing to worry about. Grapes that carry the essence of this is why people write love songs and quit their jobs to follow their dreams, and pomegranates whose seeds taste like crystallized laughter mixed with the satisfaction of finding the perfect parking spot on the first try. Orpheus composes songs just for her, not performances for audiences or commercial releases designed to climb the ancient Greek equivalent of the Billboard charts, but private concerts that are so intimate even the gods feel like they're interrupting something sacred when they eavesdrop. These aren't just love songs, they're musical portraits of her soul, audio sculptures of their relationship, sound waves that somehow capture the exact feeling of being completely ridiculously, dangerously in love with someone who loves you back exactly the same amount. Eurydice inspires him to create music that transcends his previous work in ways that make his earlier compositions seem like practice runs, where his older pieces controlled nature through divine power and technical mastery. These new songs create beauty through pure emotion, and the kind of artistic honesty that can only come from someone who has found exactly what they were looking for, without even knowing they were searching for it. Flowers don't just bloom when he plays these new compositions. They bloom in patterns that tell stories, in colors that don't exist in any earthly garden, with fragrances that smell like specific memories. Their first conversation, her laugh when she's trying not to snort, the way she hums while organizing their spice cabinet, the sound she makes when she's concentrating on something difficult and adorable. Their love becomes a feedback loop of creative inspiration and joy that's so pure it's almost nauseating to witness if you're not in a similarly blissful relationship. She dances to his music, her movements so perfectly synchronized with his melodies that you can't tell if the music is following her dance or if she's choreographing the universe itself. They create art together without trying, simply by existing in the same space and being sickeningly happy about it in ways that make single people either deeply hopeful or completely despairing about their own romantic prospects. This is love at its most concentrated, refined, and potentially dangerous level. The kind that makes other couples question whether they're even trying hard enough, that makes single people consider either finding true love immediately or giving up on the concept entirely and adopting cats. It's love so perfect it makes romantic comedies look cynical, so pure it makes Disney movies seem like gritty realistic dramas, so intense it makes soap operas appear understated and emotionally restrained. You can practically taste the sweetness in the air around them. Feel the warmth radiating from their happiness, like a space heater powered by pure contentment and mutual adoration. Time seems different in their presence, not slower or faster, but more meaningful, like each moment is being carefully catalogued by the universe as evidence that sometimes, just sometimes, things actually work out perfectly and people get exactly what they deserve in the best possible way. Which, of course, means the cosmic Murphy's Law is about to kick in with the subtlety of a freight train hitting a wall of dynamite during a fireworks factory explosion. Because in Greek mythology, the gods have a strict policy that's written in the cosmic fine print. The more beautiful and perfect something is, the more spectacularly it needs to be destroyed, preferably in ways that will be talked about for millennia, and used as cautionary tales about the dangers of being too happy. Chapter 3. The tragedy. Now you find yourself in what should be another perfect day in paradise. Except the cosmic joke is about to reach its punchline, and the only people who aren't in on it are the two people it's going to absolutely destroy. You're walking through the same beautiful forest where Orpheus and Eurydice have spent countless blissful days, but today there's something different in the air. It tastes like that moment right before your phone battery dies, during an important call, mixed with the feeling you get when you realize you've been walking around all day with spinach in your teeth and nobody told you. Eurydice decides to take a walk with her fellow nymphs, which in ancient Greek terms is basically a girl's day out, except instead of hitting the mall and complaining about men while trying on overpriced shoes, they're frolicking through meadows and probably gossiping about which gods are having midlife crises this week. Did you hear Zeus bought a sports chariot? Ugh, classic midlife crisis behavior. Next he'll be dating mortals half his age. Oh wait, he already does that. The forest is alive with their laughter. These are beings whose entire job description is be beautiful and make nature look good by association. So even their casual hangouts look like a shampoo commercial directed by someone who really understands lighting and has an unlimited budget for flower petals and strategically placed sunbeams. But lurking in the shadows like that guy at parties who corners you by the snack table and won't stop talking about his cryptocurrency investments is Aristeas. This dude is basically the ancient Greek equivalent of that guy who slides into your DMs with "hey beautiful" messages and then gets genuinely offended when you don't respond within 5 minutes, like you owe him your immediate attention. Undivided romantic interest. Aristeas is a minor god. Think middle management in the divine corporate structure. The kind of guy who has just enough authority to be annoying but not enough class to use it responsibly. He's the divine patron of beekeeping and olive growing, which sounds harmless and agricultural, until you realize that someone who controls swarms of insects and can make your crops fail has some serious leverage over your daily life and could probably ruin your entire economy if he's having a bad day. He's got the kind of job that comes with a decent benefits package but limited upward mobility, which probably explains why he has so much time to harass wood nymphs, instead of focusing on professional development, or maybe taking up a hobby that doesn't involve stalking women who are clearly not interested in his particular brand of charm. Aristeas is the kind of guy who thinks no means try harder, I'm married means convince me otherwise, and please leave me alone means play harder to get, because I obviously love the attention. He's basically a walking red flag convention, the human or divine embodiment of every warning sign that dating coaches tell you to watch out for. Except he's got supernatural powers, and apparently no one ever taught him about consent or basic social cues. When he sees Eurydice dancing in a sunlit clearing, looking like a live-action Disney princess who's never had to deal with creepy men or internet trolls, he gets that look that every woman throughout history has learned to recognize from 50 yards away. It's the expression that says I want that, and I've decided that my wanting it is more important than her agency. consent, basic human dignity, or the fact that she's clearly married to someone else and having a great time without me. It's the face that launched 1,000 restraining orders, the look that makes pepper spray manufacturers profitable, the expression that suggests someone has confused romantic persistence with criminal behavior and thinks romantic comedies are actually instruction manuals rather than entertainment featuring problematic behavior that shouldn't be replicated in real life. When Eurydice politely declines his advances, because she's married, happy, and also not interested in trading down from musical genius, demigod with great hair and emotional intelligence, to budget brand agricultural deity with boundary issues and questionable personal hygiene. Aristeas decides this is obviously just hard-to-get behavior. In his tiny, entitled brain, no woman could possibly prefer someone else when a minor god of honey production is available and making himself known. It's like assuming someone would rather eat gas station sushi than go to a 5-star restaurant. Except the gas station sushi has delusions of grandeur and anger management issues. So he does what toxic men have done since the dawn of time, probably while invented language specifically, so they could argue about why their inappropriate behavior is actually romantic. He escalates. Since charm won't work, and his version of charm has all the subtlety of a brick through a stained glass window during a quiet meditation session, he decides to use the classical approach of entitled men everywhere. If she won't choose him voluntarily, he'll just take that choice away from her. He starts chasing her through the forest like this is some kind of romantic comedy meet cute, instead of the beginning of a tragedy that will make Shakespeare look like he specialized in light, fluffy entertainment with happy endings and minimal body counts. This is less charming pursuit and more terrifying predator behavior, but Aristeas apparently missed the memo about the difference between the two. You can feel Eurydice's terror as she runs, her heart pounding so hard it seems to shake the very leaves on the trees around her. The forest that has always been her sanctuary, her playground, her safe space, suddenly becomes a maze of potential hiding spots and dead ends. Every shadow could conceal her pursuer, every rustling bush might be him closing in, every bird call could be covering the sound of his approach. It's like being trapped in the world's most beautiful horror movie, where the scenic location makes the danger feel even more surreal and threatening. Eurydice runs with the desperate speed of someone who understands that her entire future depends on reaching safety. But she's also making the classic horror movie mistake of looking back over her shoulder to see if the villain is gaining on her. It's like texting while walking, except instead of bumping into a pole or falling into a fountain, she's about to step on something that will ruin everyone's day permanently and turn this from a comedy of errors into a full-blown tragedy. And here's where the universe reveals its truly sick sense of humor, the kind of cosmic irony that makes you wonder if the fates are actually just really twisted comedy writers who got bored with happy endings and decided to specialize in dramatic irony with a side of psychological trauma. In her panic, not watching where she's stepping because she's too busy making sure Mr. Inappropriate isn't gaining on her. Eurydice steps directly onto a viper that's been having a perfectly nice afternoon nap on a warm rock. The snake, startled from its peaceful siesta by a sudden foot to the face, which is honestly a pretty rude way to wake up from a nap, does what millions of years of evolution have programmed it to do. It bites first and asks questions later. This is basically the reptilian equivalent of someone breaking into your house while you're sleeping and you responding with whatever weapon is handy, except the weapon is venomous fangs and the breaking and entering was completely accidental. This isn't just any snake. This is a viper whose venom is so potent it could probably kill a minor god if they weren't paying attention and had forgotten to renew their immortality insurance. For a nymph, even one with supernatural beauty, perfect Instagram lighting, and a skincare routine blessed by Aphrodite herself, it's basically a death sentence delivered faster than Amazon Prime shipping, which is to say, unreasonably fast and with no opportunity for customer complaints or refund requests. The bite happens so quickly there's no time for dramatic last words. No opportunity for meaningful goodbyes. No chance to explain to Orpheus that this whole mess started because some divine middle manager couldn't handle rejection like a mature adult. It's the kind of sudden, random tragedy that makes you want to file a complaint with the universe's customer service department. Except the universe has notoriously terrible customer service and a strict all-sales final policy. You watch in horror as Eurydice stumbles, looks down at the twin puncture wounds in her ankle, and realizes with devastating clarity that her perfect life just ended because of one creepy god with entitlement issues and one startled reptile with trust problems. The venom works faster than seems fair or reasonable, turning her from a vibrant, dancing embodiment of natural beauty into someone who's rapidly running out of time to say goodbye to everything she loves. The forest goes silent, not the peaceful quiet of a nature preserve or the comfortable silence of a library, but the awful silence that follows when something terrible happens and even the wildlife knows to shut up and pay respects. Birds stop singing, wind stops rustling leaves, even the insects seem to pause their buzzing out of sympathy for what's unfolding. It's like nature itself is holding its breath, waiting to see if somehow this can be fixed, if someone can rewind the last few minutes and make better choices. Aristeas, arriving at the scene of his crime, like the world's worst first responder, takes one look at the dying woman he's been chasing and has the absolute audacity to feel sorry for himself. Not remorse for his actions, not grief for her suffering, not even basic human decency or recognition that his behavior caused this tragedy, just self-pity, because his entertainment has been ruined, and now he'll have to find something else to do with his afternoon. He disappears back into the forest like the coward he is, probably to go write bad poetry about how women are complicated and never appreciate nice guys like him. Or maybe to update his divine dating profile with something about how he's just looking for someone who appreciates traditional romance and doesn't understand why modern nymphs are so difficult and unreasonable about things like consent, personal boundaries. Chapter 4. The decision impossible. You stand beside Orpheus as he cradles Eurydice's lifeless body, and the sound that comes from his throat isn't quite human anymore. It's like grief learned to play an instrument and decided to perform the most heartbreaking solo in history, except the instrument is his entire soul and the audience is the universe itself, which is taking notes for future reference about the limits of mortal suffering. For 3 days, he doesn't eat, doesn't sleep, doesn't speak to anyone who tries to offer comfort or practical advice about moving on and the healing process. He just holds her and plays music, so sad it makes emo bands look cheerful by comparison, so depressing it makes funeral directors uncomfortable, so melancholy that even professional mourners start suggesting maybe he should try some upbeat tunes for variety. This isn't just sadness. This is the kind of loss that makes you question whether the universe has any quality control whatsoever, whether someone is asleep at the cosmic controls, whether maybe the gods are just making it up as they go along and hoping nobody notices the inconsistencies in their management style. Orpheus discovers that all his power, all his divine connections, all his supernatural musical ability that can make rocks weep and trees relocate to better neighborhoods, can't fix the one thing that actually matters. He can make rivers change course, but he can't make a heart beat again. He can move mountains, but he can't move the boundary between life and death. He's basically Superman, except his kryptonite is mortality and the laws of physics, and his arch nemesis is the fundamental nature of existence itself. His music during these 3 days becomes so powerful that it affects the weather patterns. Storm clouds gather just to have something appropriately dramatic to do while listening to his laments. The sun dims because even solar radiation is getting depressed by the sheer emotional intensity. Local wildlife starts showing up with tissues and emotional support, which is touching but also slightly ridiculous when you're receiving condolences from a family of concerned badgers who've organized themselves into a grief counseling support group. The other gods watch this display of loss with something approaching awe mixed with professional curiosity. They're used to mortals who accept death as inevitable, who grieve appropriately for the standard mourning period, and then move on, because that's what reasonable people do when faced with cosmic forces beyond their control. But Orpheus isn't fully mortal. He's got divine blood, divine talent, and apparently divine levels if I refuse to accept this nonsense coursing through his veins, like the world's most stubborn energy drink. But then something shifts in the air around him, like the moment when someone who's been sad about a cancelled Netflix show suddenly decides to storm the studio and demand they bring it back. Except instead of a streaming service, he's about to take on the fundamental forces of death and cosmic law. You watch as Orpheus's grief transforms from passive acceptance to active rebellion, his expression changing from broken despair to determined fury that would make action movie heroes look indecisive. "No," he says, and the word carries enough power to make reality itself pause its regular programming and consider whether it's been doing its job correctly. This is not how this ends. This is not the story we're telling. I did not become the greatest musician in history just to play sad songs at my wife's funeral, and then spend the rest of my life writing depressing ballads about loss and regret. The decision he makes is so insane it would be hilarious, if it weren't so tragic, so completely unhinged that it makes other famously bad decisions throughout history look reasonable by comparison. Normal people, when confronted with death, go through the 5 stages of grief and eventually reach acceptance, possibly with the help of therapy, support groups, and time. Orpheus skips straight to bargaining, but his version of bargaining involves challenging the cosmic order itself and basically declaring war on the concept of finality. He decides he's going to march into hell, find death, and convince him to give Eurydice back through the power of really, really good music and what amounts to the most ambitious customer service complaint in the history of existence. This is like deciding to negotiate with gravity by writing it a strongly worded letter, or trying to convince the ocean to be less wet through interpretive dance, or attempting to get a refund from Amazon after your warranty expired by composing a heartfelt song about your customer experience. The Underworld isn't a place mortals visit and return from. It's the end of all journeys, the final destination, the realm where hope goes to die and stays dead because it likes the accommodations and the job security. It's basically the cosmic equivalent of trying to return something to a store that has a no returns, no exchanges, all sales final. Don't even think about it policy enforced by security guards with supernatural powers and very little patience for customer complaints. But here's the thing about Orpheus. His insanity comes with a divine pedigree and supernatural backup that most people don't have access to through their family health insurance plans. He's not just some random guy with a guitar thinking he can charm his way past cosmic security, like he's trying to talk his way into a VIP section at a nightclub. He's the son of a god, trained by the muses, armed with a lyre that can rewrite reality, and motivated by the kind of desperate love that has historically been capable of starting wars, toppling governments, and making people do things that get them featured in both history books and medical journals as cautionary tales about the dangers of extreme emotional states. His friends and family try to talk him out of it, which is like trying to talk someone out of breathing or convince water not to be wet. Orpheus, they say, sounding like the world's most patient customer service representatives, you can't just walk into hell and demand a refund on death. That's not how the cosmic order works. There are rules, procedures, forms to fill out in triplicate, probably a waiting period, and some kind of administrative fee. But Orpheus has reached that point of grief where reasonable advice sounds like background noise, and impossible plans seem not just feasible but inevitable, like the logical next step in a process that makes perfect sense if you don't think about it too hard. "Watch me," he replies, with the confidence of someone who has either completely lost his mind or achieved a level of clarity that transcends normal human limitations and most standard definitions of sanity. Given that he's half god and fully in love, it could honestly go either way. Chapter 5. The journey to hell. Now you find yourself descending into the underworld alongside Orpheus. And let me tell you, The Yelp reviews for this place are consistently 1 star, and they're all completely justified. The customer complaints include things like terrible lighting, no cell phone service, staff extremely unfriendly, no return policy, and very difficult to leave, would not recommend for casual visits. This isn't some metaphorical journey through the shadows of grief that you might read about in self-help books or psychology articles. This is an actual, physical descent into the literal realm of the dead. And it makes Dante's version look like a luxury cruise with minor inconveniences and complaints about the buffet service. The travel brochures for this destination are seriously misleading, probably written by someone who's never actually been there, and is working purely from second-hand descriptions and wishful thinking. The entrance to Hades isn't some dramatic gate with motivational posters about abandoning hope. It's a cave that looks like the Earth decided to yawn and forgot to close its mouth afterward, like the planet is suffering from some kind of geological sleep apnea. The air that wafts out tastes like every funeral you've ever attended decided to have a potluck dinner with expired food, mixed with the metallic tang of old pennies and that smell that makes you wonder if someone forgot to take out the cosmic garbage for several millennia. Orpheus walks with the determined stride of someone who has already accepted that this journey will probably kill him, but who has decided that some things are worth dying for, even if you're not entirely sure they're worth the customer service experience you're about to endure. His lyre bounces against his back with each step, and occasionally he plucks a string, sending notes echoing through the darkness, not for magic or protection, but because even heroes get nervous in the dark, and sometimes you need a little background music to keep your courage up and remind yourself that you're the protagonist of this story, not a random victim in a horror movie. The first obstacle is the river Acheron, and its ferryman, Charon, makes every DMV employee look like a cheerful hospitality professional who's genuinely excited about helping you with your paperwork. This guy is ancient in a way that predates concepts like customer service, basic human decency, or bathing regularly enough to be socially acceptable. He's been doing this job since the beginning of time, and it shows in his attitude toward clients, which can best be described as aggressively indifferent with a side of barely contained hostility. His boat looks like it was built from driftwood, broken dreams, and whatever floats to the surface after particularly bad shipwrecks, held together with spite and what appears to be some kind of cosmic duct tape. The guy has the charm of a tax audit conducted by someone who's having the worst day of their career, and the warmth of a penguin's feet during an Antarctic winter, which, considering his job requirements, is probably exactly what Hades was looking for when he posted the job listing on the Cosmic Employment Board. Charon takes one look at Orpheus, clearly alive, obviously breathing, definitely not meeting the basic requirements for passage, and basically tells him to get lost in what's probably the ancient Greek equivalent of sorry, buddy. This is a dead people-only cruise. Try dying first, then we'll talk. Next. His customer service training appears to have consisted entirely of being as unhelpful as possible, while technically doing your job. But then Orpheus does something that changes the entire customer service experience, and probably violates several company policies. He pulls out his lyre and starts playing. And suddenly this isn't just another day at the worst job in the afterlife. It's become a private concert by the greatest musician who ever lived. And even Charon's professional apathy can't withstand that level of artistic excellence. The music that emerges is unlike anything that has ever echoed across these waters. It's not the nature-controlling melodies of his greatest hits album, not the grief-stricken laments of his recent depression period, but something entirely new, pure emotion given sound, love made audible, desperation refined into art, so perfect it temporarily makes you forget where you are and why you're there. You watch Charon's expression shift from irritated dismissal to confusion to something that might actually be wonder. Like someone who's been eating cafeteria food for decades suddenly tasting a 5-star meal prepared by a chef who actually cares about the dining experience. For the first time in millennia, the ferryman of the dead stops thinking about death and starts remembering what it felt like to be alive, to care about something other than following procedure, to have feelings that weren't just variations on another day, another dead person. When is my shift over? The boat ride across the Acheron becomes the world's most unusual music cruise. You're surrounded by the shades of the dead drifting through the water, like living screenshots from everyone's worst nightmares. But as Orpheus plays, something unprecedented happens. The dead stop drifting aimlessly and start listening, their translucent forms showing expressions they haven't worn since they were alive. Ancient warriors who died in battle start humming along, their ghostly voices adding harmony to Orpheus's melody in what becomes the most moving choir performance in the history of death. Lovers who were separated by mortality reach across the spiritual divide to hold hands that can't quite touch, but somehow connect anyway, like trying to high-five someone through a window, but making it work through sheer determination and the power of really good background music. Next comes Cerberus, the three-headed guard dog of Hades. And this creature makes every beware of dog sign in history look like a pleasant suggestion rather than a serious warning about potential bodily harm. Each head is the size of a small building, with teeth like a sword collection and eyes that glow with what appears to be concentrated anger management issues, mixed with professional pride in being absolutely terrifying. This isn't man's best friend. This is man's worst nightmare that went to the gym, studied martial arts, and decided to triple its effectiveness by growing 2 additional heads with independent personality disorders and possibly different political opinions. The heads probably argue among themselves about strategy, shift schedules, and whose turn it is to intimidate visitors. But Orpheus doesn't run screaming like a reasonable person would. Instead, he sits down right there in front of the most terrifying creature in existence and starts playing what might be the most beautiful lullaby ever composed, like he's trying to help a cranky toddler take a nap, except the toddler weighs several tons and could eat him in 1 bite per head. The music flows around Cerberus like warm honey mixed with childhood memories, and that feeling you get when someone you love hugs you after a really bad day. You watch 3 pairs of fierce eyes gradually soften, 3 massive heads slowly lower to the ground, 3 distinct personalities unified in the shared experience of hearing something so beautiful it transcends the boundary between "I will tear you apart," and "this is actually quite lovely," and "maybe I should reconsider my career choices." The great guardian of Hades, terror of countless souls and enforcer of cosmic law, lies down like a puppy who's just heard his favorite song and realized it's nap time. His 3 tails start wagging in rhythm, creating what might be the most adorable sight in the Underworld's history, if you can get past the fact that each tail could probably demolish a small building if it got too enthusiastic. Chapter 6. The power of divine music. You enter the throne room of Hades, alongside Orpheus, and immediately understand why mortals aren't supposed to be here. The air itself feels heavy with finality, thick with the weight of every decision about life and death ever made. This isn't just a room. It's the administrative center of eternity, the cosmic courthouse, where appeals are never heard and verdicts are always final. The architecture is imposing in a way that makes Gothic cathedrals look cheerful, black marble pillars that stretch impossibly high, carved with scenes of judgment and eternal punishment, all illuminated by flames that cast no warmth. Only a cold light that reveals too much and comforts nothing. The walls themselves seem to absorb sound, hope, and warmth, leaving behind only the essential coldness of absolute authority. Every surface is polished to mirror perfection, but the reflections they show aren't quite right. They show you as you'll look when you're dead, stripped of all the little vanities and pretenses that make mortal life bearable. The ceiling disappears into darkness, so complete it feels like staring into the void between stars, while the floor is made of obsidian so perfectly black it creates the unsettling impression that you're walking on crystallized emptiness. But something unprecedented is happening in this realm, where change never comes and surprise is forbidden. As Orpheus steps forward, his lyre catches that cold light and transforms it reflecting it back as something warmer, more alive. The very stones seem to hum in response to his presence, as if the palace itself is remembering what it felt like before it became the administrative center of death. You can actually see ripples of warmth spreading outward from where he stands, like heat mirages in reverse, creating pockets of comfort inespecially designed to crush all hope. The throne room is filled with the shades of the dead who serve as Hades' court. Former kings and queens, ancient heroes, legendary monsters, all reduced to translucent advisors whose only purpose is to confirm that yes, death is indeed final, and no, there are no exceptions to cosmic law. They hover around the edges of the vast space, like living memories of every argument that has ever been made against the inevitability of endings, and every one of those arguments has been systematically refuted by the reality of their presence here. Hades sits upon his throne of black diamond, and Persephone beside him on her seat of carved obsidian. These aren't beings you negotiate with, they're forces of nature given form, concepts like finality and judgment made manifest. Hades looks exactly like what you'd expect death to look like if death decided to cosplay as a particularly intimidating CEO, tall, pale, with eyes that have seen every ending and found most of them disappointingly predictable. His crown isn't just decorative. It's forged from the compressed regrets of everyone who has ever died wishing they'd done something different, and it pulses with a dark light that makes you acutely aware of every mistake you've ever made. Persephone is more complex. Half the year she's the goddess of spring and renewal, the other half she's the queen of the dead. Right now she's in her underworld aspect, beautiful but cold, like a flower preserved in ice. Her dress seems to be cut from the darkness between stars, and her jewelry is made from crystallized tears. Not metaphorically, but literally the preserved sorrow of everyone who has ever mourned. Her expression suggests she's seen every possible plea, heard every desperate bargain, and found them all equally futile. Yet there's something in her eyes that suggests she remembers what it felt like before she became an administrator of endings. The throne room falls completely silent as Orpheus approaches, but it's not the comfortable silence of expectation. It's the oppressive quiet that comes before executions, the pause that precedes final judgments. Even the eternal flames pause their flickering, as if the underworld itself is holding its breath. The shades of the dead drift closer, sensing that something unprecedented is about to happen, their translucent forms creating a gallery of witnesses to whatever impossibility is about to unfold. This is the moment when mortal determination meets cosmic law, when love challenges the fundamental order of existence, when someone with nothing left to lose faces beings who control everything. The air in the throne room becomes so thick with tension that it's almost solid, like walking through invisible syrup made from concentrated anticipation and existential dread. Orpheus doesn't kneel, doesn't grovel, doesn't even acknowledge the terrifying power arrayed before him. The ghosts of ancient heroes whisper warnings that he ignores. The shades of former kings gesture frantically for him to show proper respect to beings who could unmake him with a thought. Instead, he does the one thing that has never been tried in this place. He begins to play music not about death, not about endings, but about the very thing that the underworld has spent eternity trying to extinguish: hope. The melody that emerges from his lyre is unlike anything that has ever echoed in these halls. It's not the nature-controlling music of his earthly performances, not even the grief-stricken laments of his mourning. This is music stripped down to its absolute essence, every note carrying the weight of perfect love, every harmony reflecting the beauty of two souls finding each other in an infinite universe. The sound waves seem to take on physical form as they spread through the throne room, creating ripples of light in the oppressive darkness, carrying colors that have no names and emotions that have no words. You watch as the impossible begins to happen. The eternal flames that have burned cold and comfortless since the underworld was created suddenly flicker with warmth, casting light that actually provides comfort instead of harsh illumination. The obsidian walls, which have never reflected anything but despair, begin to show glimpses of the world above, sunlight on grass, children laughing, lovers walking hand in hand through gardens that smell like possibility instead of regret. The shades of the dead, who have existed for eons in a state of emotional numbness, suddenly begin to feel again. Ancient warriors remember what they were fighting for, instead of just how they died. Former lovers recall the joy of their relationships, instead of just the pain of separation. Even the monsters who guard various sections of the underworld lift their heads in wonder, their eternal fury temporarily replaced by something that might actually be peace. But it's the reaction of the royal couple that truly demonstrates the unprecedented nature of what's happening. Hades, the being who has presided over every death since time began, who has never shown mercy because mercy would undermine the cosmic order itself, begins to feel something he hasn't experienced since he became Lord of the Dead. He begins to remember what it was like to love someone so much that losing them would unmake the world. The music tells Eurydice's story without words, her laughter becoming melody, her dancing transformed into rhythm, their love made audible in harmonies so perfect they seem to restructure reality around them. But more than that, it tells the story of every love that has ever been cut short, every happiness that ended too soon, every moment of perfect joy that was stolen by circumstance or cruelty, or simple, random chance. The lyre doesn't just play notes. It broadcasts emotions directly into the consciousness of everyone who hears it, forcing them to experience love, not as an abstract concept, but as a lived reality. Persephone is the first to crack. You can see tears forming in her eyes, actual tears from the Queen of the Dead, moisture in a realm that hasn't seen rain since it was created. She's remembering her own story, how she was taken from the world above, how she was forced to become something she never chose to be, how love can be both salvation and imprisonment, depending on who holds the key. Her tears aren't just water, they're liquid crystallizations of every moment of happiness she sacrificed to become Queen of the Dead. Every spring afternoon she gave up to maintain the cosmic balance. But it's Hades who provides the real shock. The Lord of the Dead, the cosmic force of finality, the being whose very nature is the opposite of hope, he begins to weep. Not just tears, but the kind of deep, body-shaking sobs that come from a grief so profound it changes the fundamental structure of who you are. For the first time in cosmic history, death itself is crying, and the tears that fall from his face create small pools of liquid starlight on the obsidian floor, transforming the throne room into something that resembles a chapel more than a courthouse. The effect on the underworld is immediate and unprecedented. Throughout the realm of the dead, impossible things begin to happen. The eternal punishments pause as their subjects stop to listen to music that reminds them what they're being punished for losing. Tantalus stops reaching for fruit that will always move away and instead reaches toward the sound of music that makes him remember what satisfaction felt like. His eternal hunger doesn't disappear. But for the first time in millennia, he experiences something stronger than desperate craving. He experiences beauty. The rivers of lament that flow throughout the underworld temporarily run clear, as the accumulated sorrows of millennia are overwhelmed by the pure beauty of perfect love expressed through perfect art. The river Lethe, which erases memories, begins to flow backward, returning forgotten moments of joy to souls who thought they had lost them forever. The river Styx, which binds oaths with unbreakable force, begins to hum in harmony with Orpheus's lyre, as if even cosmic law recognizes that some things transcend legal obligations. Sisyphus's boulder stops rolling backward, held in place by melodies that make even the gods pause their judgments. For the first time since his punishment began, he looks up from his eternal labor and sees the sky above his mountain, remembers what it felt like to have goals other than futile repetition. The Danaids stop trying to fill their broken jars, and instead cup their hands to their ears, trying to capture and hold sounds more precious than any water, their faces showing expressions of wonder that they thought had been erased forever. Even Cerberus, the three-headed guardian, lifts his massive heads from sleep to listen, his tail wagging gently as he dreams of running through fields of music instead of guarding gates of sorrow. Each of his 3 faces shows a different emotion. The left head weeps with joy, the center head smiles for the first time since puppyhood, and the right head howls, not with rage or challenge, but with the pure expression of a creature that has suddenly remembered what happiness sounds like. The Furies, those ancient goddesses of vengeance who exist solely to punish crimes against family, find their eternal rage temporarily quieted by harmonies that remind them what justice looked like before it became corrupted by endless punishment. They lower their whips, still their screams, and for a few precious moments remember that they were created not to destroy, but to protect the bonds that hold civilization together. This is music that doesn't just entertain or even move, it transforms. Every note is an argument against the inevitability of despair. Every harmony a proof that beauty can exist even in the darkest places. Every melody a demonstration that love, properly expressed, can change the unchangeable. The lyre in Orpheus's hands becomes a tuning fork for reality itself, adjusting the frequency of existence to harmonize with hope instead of resignation. Throughout the underworld, the impossible continues to unfold. Flowers begin to bloom in the fields of asphodel. Color returns to the grey lands, where the unremarkable dead spend eternity in bland neutrality. And even the pit of Tartarus temporarily muffles its screams, as the worst criminals in history pause their eternal torments to listen to something that reminds them of who they were before they became monsters. Orpheus plays for what feels like hours, his fingers moving across the strings with supernatural precision that comes from desperation, refined into art. His voice weaves through the instrumental harmonies like a golden thread connecting all the scattered pieces of hope that have ever existed, creating a tapestry of sound that reweaves the fundamental fabric of the underworld. The performance becomes more than music, it becomes prayer, plea, and promise all woven together into something that transcends the boundary between mortal art and divine intervention. When the last note finally fades, the silence that follows is different from the oppressive quiet that usually fills the underworld. This is the silence of awe, the pause that comes after witnessing something so beautiful it temporarily breaks your ability to process normal reality. Even the flames seem to burn differently, casting light that's warmer, more alive, more reminiscent of the world above. The very air tastes different, less like endings and more like possibilities. Hades looks at Orpheus with an expression that nobody, not his subjects, not his wife, not even the other gods, has ever seen on the face of death. Wonder mixed with something that might actually be respect. This mortal has just accomplished something that was supposed to be impossible. He has reminded the underworld what it feels like to be alive, what it means to hope, what love looks like when it refuses to accept defeat. Chapter 7. The Encounter with Death. The throne room of Hades transforms in the wake of Orpheus's performance. But the change is subtle, like the difference between winter and the first day of spring, barely perceptible but fundamentally altering everything. The oppressive atmosphere that usually crushes hope begins to lighten, not disappearing entirely but shifting into something that acknowledges the possibility of redemption. You can taste the change in the air. It still carries the metallic tang of finality, but now there's an undertone of something warmer, more complex, like the first hint of spring hidden in winter's coldest breath. The shades of the dead who populate the court hover closer now, their translucent forms showing expressions they haven't worn since they were alive. Ancient kings, who have spent millennia in resigned acceptance of their fate, suddenly stand straighter, remembering what it felt like to have agency, to make decisions that mattered. Former queens touch their spectral faces, as if trying to remember what it felt like to feel tears of joy instead of just tears of regret. Even the monsters that serve as guards and enforcers in this realm seem less monstrous, their eternal fury temporarily replaced by something that approaches curiosity. Hades rises from his throne, and the simple act of the Lord of the Dead, standing carries enough cosmic weight to make the palace foundations tremble. This isn't just movement, It's a fundamental shift in the natural order, like gravity deciding to work sideways or time choosing to flow backward. When death himself stands to acknowledge a mortal, reality pays attention, and you can feel the universe holding its breath as cosmic forces realign around this unprecedented moment. His movement is fluid, but heavy, like watching mountains decide to relocate. The black diamond of his throne continues to pulse with dark energy, even without his presence, as if it's an extension of his will, rather than just furniture. His robes, which seem to be cut from the darkness between stars, flow around him like liquid night, and where they brush against the obsidian floor, tiny flowers of frost appear, not from cold, but from the sheer concentration of endings that he carries with him everywhere. Orpheus, Hades says, and his voice carries the authority of every ending that has ever been, every final breath, every last heartbeat. It's a voice that has pronounced final judgment on every soul that has ever existed, that has closed the book on every life story ever written. But there's something else in it too, something that hasn't been heard in this realm since it was created, genuine curiosity mixed with what might actually be admiration. The Lord of the Dead is intrigued, and that alone is enough to rewrite the fundamental laws of his domain. The acoustics of the throne room amplify his words, sending them echoing through chambers and corridors throughout the underworld. In the fields of punishment, tormented souls pause their eternal suffering to listen. In the asphodel meadows, the unremarkable dead lift their heads from their eternal tedium. Even in the deepest pits of Tartarus, the worst criminals in history stop their screaming long enough to hear what death himself has to say to the mortal who made him weep. You watch as Persephone also rises, her movement more fluid than her husband's but equally significant. In her underworld aspect, she's terrifying in her cold beauty, but Orpheus's music has awakened something in her that connects to her other nature, the part of her that remembers sunshine and growing things and the world above where love stories have happy endings instead of cautionary tales. Her dress, which seemed to be woven from crystallized sorrow, now shows hints of color at the edges, not the vibrant greens and golds of spring, but the subtle promise of renewal that comes even in the darkest winter. Your music, she says, and her voice carries the authority of seasons changing, of life returning to the world, of hope surviving impossible winters, has reminded us of things we had set aside in the interest of maintaining order. Each word is carefully chosen, carrying weight that extends far beyond its surface meaning. She's not just talking about personal feelings, she's acknowledging that the cosmic order itself might need to be flexible enough to accommodate exceptional circumstances. The conversation that follows is unlike any diplomatic negotiation in the history of mythology. This isn't gods condescending to mortals or mortals groveling before divine power. This is three beings recognizing each other as artists. Hades, the architect of eternal justice, Persephone, the choreographer of life and death cycles, and Orpheus, the composer who has just proven that love can create music powerful enough to rewrite cosmic law. They speak to each other as equals united by the recognition that they're all, in their own ways, trying to create something meaningful from the raw materials of existence. Hades walks closer to Orpheus, each step echoing through the throne room, like thunder, like solid, like the footsteps of time itself walking across the stage of eternity. You have brought something into my realm that was never meant to exist here, he says. But there's no anger in it, only a kind of wondering acknowledgement, hope, beauty, the possibility that endings might not be absolute. His words carry the weight of someone who has spent eternity believing in the necessity of finality, only to be confronted with evidence that maybe, just maybe, some things are too beautiful to end. You can see the internal struggle playing out on the god's face, visible in the way shadows move across his features like clouds across the moon. For eons, Hades has been the cosmic embodiment of finality, the force that ensures death has meaning, because it cannot be undone. His entire existence is built on the principle that some boundaries are absolute, that some losses are permanent, that the natural order requires acceptance of things that cannot be changed. He is the full stop at the end of every sentence, the final chord that resolves every symphony, the closing credits that end every story. But Orpheus's music has introduced a virus into that certainty, not the virus of rebellion or defiance, but something far more dangerous, the virus of possibility. The idea that maybe, just maybe, love really can conquer death if it's pure enough, desperate enough, beautiful enough. It's not a challenge to his authority so much as a revelation that his authority might be more flexible than he previously understood. The throne room fills with the whispered conversations of the dead, their voices creating a susurrus of speculation and wonder that hasn't been heard in this realm since it was created. They're debating possibilities that were previously unthinkable. Could love really override death? Could beauty truly triumph over endings? Could hope exist in a place specifically designed to eliminate it? Their excitement is palpable, creating an energy that makes the air itself seem to vibrate with potential. Persephone moves to stand beside her husband, and you can see the complex dynamics at play. She understands being trapped by circumstances, being forced into a role she never chose, being defined by relationships that were imposed rather than freely chosen. But she also understands the power of transformation, the way that even the darkest circumstances can become sources of unexpected strength. Her experience of living half her life in each realm gives her a perspective that neither the purely living nor the eternally dead can possess. "Tell us," she says to Orpheus, her voice carrying both the authority of a queen and the curiosity of someone who remembers what it felt like to be surprised by love. "What exactly are you asking of us?" The question hangs in the air like incense, filling the throne room with the weight of infinite possibility balanced against cosmic law. This is the moment when the impossible request must be made explicit. Orpheus has charmed his way past every guardian, overcome every obstacle, moved the unmovable hearts of the gods themselves. But now comes the part where he has to actually ask for what no mortal has ever been granted, the return of a life that has been claimed by death, the reversal of the most fundamental law of existence, the transformation of ending into beginning. "I want my wife back," he says, and the simple directness of it is more powerful than any elaborate plea could be. The words cut through the cosmic complexity surrounding them like a sword through silk, reducing all the philosophical implications and universal consequences to their most basic element. A man who loves his wife wants her returned to him, not as a shade, not as a memory, not as a dream. "I want Eurydice returned to me alive, breathing, warm, real. I want death to release its claim on her." The silence that follows is pregnant with cosmic implications that stretch beyond this single request to encompass the very nature of reality itself. What Orpheus is asking for isn't just a favor, it's a fundamental challenge to the order of existence. If death can be reversed, if love can literally conquer the grave, then what does that mean for the millions of souls who have already accepted their fate? What does it mean for the gods whose power is built on the assumption that some are hairstyle beyond mortal reach? What does it mean for the cosmic balance that keeps chaos at bay and maintains the distinction between possible and impossible? Chapter 8. The Fatal Agreement. The silence that follows Orpheus's request stretches across the throne room, like a held breath filled with the weight of decision that will either rewrite cosmic law or reaffirm it in the most brutal way possible. You can feel the attention of the entire underworld focused on this moment. Every shade, every guardian, every eternal prisoner pausing their appointed tasks to witness whatever precedent is about to be set. The very stones of the palace seem to lean inward, as if architecture itself wants to hear how the gods will respond to this unprecedented challenge. Hades exchanges a look with Persephone that contains millennia of shared understanding, entire conversations compressed into a single glance. They're not just husband and wife. They're co-administrators of the cosmic order, partners in maintaining the boundary between life and death that keeps reality stable. Their relationship has been built on the shared responsibility of ensuring that endings mean something, that death carries weight precisely because it cannot be reversed. To grant Orpheus's request would be to admit that their authority isn't absolute, that the rules they enforce aren't inviolable, but at the same time, they've just experienced something that has shaken them to their divine cause. Orpheus hasn't just played music, he's demonstrated that mortal love, properly focused and absolutely committed, can achieve things that challenge the gods themselves. He's proven that beauty and devotion, when they reach their absolute pinnacle, become forces of nature in their own right, capable of temporarily rewriting the fundamental laws that govern existence. The negotiation that follows is conducted in the language of divine diplomacy, where every word carries the weight of cosmic law, and every pause represents eons of consideration. You're witnessing something that will either become the greatest love story ever told or the most heartbreaking demonstration of why some things are impossible, even for gods. The air in the throne room becomes thick with the pressure of decision, as if reality itself is holding its breath, while cosmic forces balance on the edge of transformation. Hades begins pacing, his footsteps echoing through the throne room, like the heartbeat of eternity itself, each step sending ripples through the fabric of reality that can be felt in every corner of the underworld. "The precedent you're asking us to set," he says to Orpheus, his voice carrying the weight of every judgment he's ever made, "would fundamentally alter the relationship between life and death. If we grant your request without conditions, what prevents every other grieving lover from making the same demand? What stops every parent who has lost a child, every friend who has mourned a companion, from standing where you stand now and demanding the same exception?" The question hangs in the air like a challenge to the basic structure of existence. You can see the implications spreading outward like ripples in a cosmic pond. If love can conquer death once, why not always? If beauty can move the immovable once, why not every time? If hope can exist in the realm of endings once, why not permanently? The gods of the underworld are confronting the possibility that their entire domain might become obsolete if exceptions become expectations. But Persephone interjects with the wisdom of someone who has lived in both worlds, who understands both the necessity of boundaries and the power of exceptions. "Perhaps," she says, her voice carrying the authority of someone who has personally experienced transformation from victim to queen, from powerlessness to ultimate authority, the answer isn't whether to grant the request, but how to grant it in a way that preserves the cosmic order while acknowledging the extraordinary nature of what we've witnessed here. You can see the solution forming in the space between them, a compromise that will satisfy divine law while still offering hope to mortal love. It's the kind of solution that gods specialize in, technically generous while being practically cruel, offering everything while guaranteeing nothing. The perfect synthesis of mercy and justice, compassion and cosmic law, hope and inevitable disappointment. The shades of the dead press closer, sensing that history is being made in this moment. Ancient heroes who failed in their own impossible quests lean forward to hear how the gods will handle this particular impossibility. Former lovers who were separated by death whisper among themselves, wondering if this mortal will succeed where they failed, if his love is somehow more pure or more desperate or more worthy than theirs was. Hades stops pacing and turns to face Orpheus directly, his expression grave with the weight of the decision he's about to make. "We will grant your request," he says. And for a moment the throne room fills with the sound of cosmic machinery shifting, reality restructuring itself around this unprecedented decision. The very foundations of the underworld tremble as fundamental laws bend to accommodate mercy, and you can feel the shock waves rippling outward through every realm of existence. The relief that floods through Orpheus is visible, transforming his entire posture from desperate supplication to triumphant joy. His lyre seems to hum with sympathetic vibration, responding to the emotional upheaval of its master. The shades of the dead who have been watching begin to murmur among themselves, some with hope that their own situations might change, others with skepticism that this apparent victory will last long enough to matter. But experienced negotiators know that the real terms come after the initial agreement, and gods are the most experienced negotiators in existence. They've had eons to perfect the art of giving mortals exactly what they ask for while, ensuring that they'll never be able to keep it. The conditions that follow will be masterpieces of divine jurisprudence, technically fair while being practically impossible. However, Persephone continues, and that single word carries more menace than any threat could. There must be conditions. The cosmic order requires balance, and such an unprecedented gift cannot be given without ensuring that proper respect is maintained for the forces you're asking us to override. Her voice carries the honey-sweet tone of someone who has learned to deliver poisoned gifts with perfect politeness, mercy wrapped in cruelty, hope packaged with despair. The conditions, when they're revealed, are masterpieces of divine psychology disguised as reasonable requests. Eurydice will follow Orpheus out of the underworld, return to life and health, freed from death's claim. She will be as she was, beautiful, vibrant, loving, real. But, and in mythology, everything terrible always comes after the but. Orpheus must not look at her until they both reach the world above. She will be behind you. Hades explains with the careful precision of someone who has spent eternity crafting unbreakable rules, following your footsteps as you lead her from death back to life. You will hear her voice, perhaps feel her presence, but you must not turn around, must not look upon her face, until you have both emerged completely into the light of the living world. Each word is chosen with surgical precision, designed to create maximum psychological pressure, while maintaining the technical appearance of fairness. The condition seems simple enough. Don't look back until you're both safe, but you can already sense the cruel genius of it. The way it's specifically designed to exploit the deepest vulnerabilities of human nature: doubt, anxiety, the need for confirmation, the inability to trust completely in promises made by beings whose idea of mercy comes with elaborate terms and conditions. It's a test that appears to evaluate patience, but actually measures faith, seemingly about obedience, but really about the impossibility of love without trust. Orpheus, still high on the triumph of having his request granted, agrees immediately, his joy making him temporarily deaf to the psychological torture embedded in the conditions. How hard could it be? He spent days walking through the underworld, guided only by determination and hope. Surely he can manage a return journey with the promise of his beloved's life as motivation. In his euphoria, he doesn't recognize that the gods have just transformed his greatest strength, his love for Eurydice, into the weapon that will destroy his chance of keeping her. But Persephone adds another layer to the agreement that makes your blood run cold with its psychological sophistication. And Orpheus, she says, her voice carrying the authority of someone who has spent half her existence in each realm, who understands the cruel mathematics of hope and disappointment. Understand that if you fail in this condition, if you look back before you both reach the surface, Eurydice will be returned to us permanently. There will be no second chances, no additional negotiations, no appeals to higher authorities. This is the only exception that will ever be granted, the only mercy that death will ever show. The stakes are now absolute. Success means eternal happiness. Failure means eternal separation, with the added torture of knowing that he had salvation in his grasp and threw it away through a moment's weakness. It's the kind of all-or-nothing proposition that gods love, because it places the responsibility for tragedy entirely on mortal shoulders, while allowing divine beings to claim they were actually being generous. As the formal agreement is concluded with the binding power of cosmic law, you watch Eurydice materialize in the throne room, and the reunion is everything you'd expect from a love story that has moved the gods themselves. She's exactly as she was, beautiful, vibrant, laughing with joy at seeing Orpheus again, solid and real, and warm and alive. The sight of her erases all of Orpheus's caution about the conditions he's agreed to, all his careful analysis of divine psychology, all his understanding of how gods operate. She's here, she's real, she's coming home with him, and nothing else matters. They're allowed a brief moment together, just long enough for Orpheus to confirm that this is really his wife, not some cruel illusion designed to torment him further. She feels real, sounds real, smells like the jasmine and morning dew that he remembers from their perfect days together. Her touch is warm, her laugh is musical. Her eyes are bright with the same love that made him willing to challenge death itself. She tells him how proud she is of what he's accomplished, how amazed she is that his love was strong enough to move the gods of death themselves. But then comes the moment of separation that will define everything that follows. Eurydice must take her position behind Orpheus for the journey upward, and he must begin walking without looking back, trusting completely in the promise of gods, who have just demonstrated that their mercy comes with conditions designed to test the limits of mortal endurance. The psychological torture begins immediately. He can hear her, but he can't see her. He can trust her presence, but he can't confirm it. He must have faith in a situation specifically designed to erode faith through doubt. The last thing Orpheus sees as he turns to begin the journey home is Eurydice's face, radiant with joy and trust and absolute faith that he will successfully lead them both back to the world of the living. She believes in him completely, trusts in his love and determination and ability to overcome any obstacle. The weight of that trust, combined with the knowledge that one moment of weakness will destroy everything, settles on his shoulders like the responsibility for all the happiness that has ever existed. As they begin the journey upward, you can already sense the terrible inevitability of what's coming. The gods have crafted their condition with the precision of master psychologists who understand exactly how to transform love into the instrument of its own destruction. They've created a situation where the very depth of Orpheus's love for Eurydice becomes the mechanism that will ensure her permanent loss, where his devotion becomes the source of his downfall, where hope becomes the cruelest form of torture ever devised. Chapter 9. The Silent Walk. The journey upward begins in what should be triumph, but quickly transforms into the most exquisite form of psychological torture ever devised by divine minds. You walk alongside Orpheus through the winding passages that lead from the depths of Hades toward the world of the living, and every step becomes an exercise in faith, tested against the fundamental vulnerabilities of human nature. Behind Orpheus, you can hear Eurydice's footsteps, soft, rhythmic, reassuringly real. Her sandals whisper against the stone floors with the familiar sound he remembers from their walks through earthly gardens. Occasionally she hums softly, melodies that harmonize with his heartbeat and remind him of mornings when they would wake together in sunlight, her voice the first beautiful thing he heard each day. These sounds should be comforting, but instead they become instruments of doubt. Are they real? Are they memories? Are they tricks designed by gods who have perfected the art of cruel mercy? The passages through which they travel tell the story of transformation from death back toward life. The deeper tunnels, closest to Hades' throne room, are carved from obsidian so pure it seems to absorb light and hope equally. But as they climb higher, the stone gradually lightens, from black to deep grey, from grey to the color of storm clouds, from storm clouds to the soft grey of early dawn. It's a visual metaphor for the journey they're making, but it also creates an optical illusion that makes it impossible to judge distances or progress accurately. You can feel the weight of the underworld above and around them, millions of souls in their eternal rest, the accumulated sorrow of every ending since time began. But there's something different now, a stirring, a sense of attention focused on their passage. Word has spread through the realm of the dead that something unprecedented is happening. Shades drift closer to the passages, their translucent forms creating a gallery of witnesses to this impossible journey. Some whisper encouragement, others warnings, and a few simply watch in stunned silence as mortality challenges immortal law. Orpheus's pace is steady but not hurried. He understands that this isn't a race, it's a test of endurance, both physical and psychological. Each step must be deliberate, confident, unwavering. But as the journey continues, the sounds behind him begin to play with his mind in ways that the gods surely anticipated. Sometimes Eurydice's footsteps seem to fall in perfect rhythm with his own. Other times they seem to lag, creating moments of panic where he wonders if she's struggling, if she needs help, if something is wrong, and he's powerless to assist because he cannot turn around. The cruelest aspect of the god's condition becomes apparent as they walk. It's not just about not looking back. It's about maintaining absolute faith in circumstances specifically designed to erode that faith. Every echo in the tunnels could be her voice, or could be the sound of wind through stone chambers. Every shift in the rhythm of footsteps could indicate her presence, or could suggest that she's no longer there, that the god's promise was an illusion, that he's walking alone toward a cruel revelation of his own gullibility. Orpheus. Her voice comes from behind him, soft and questioning, and his heart nearly stops. Is she asking for reassurance? Is she in distress? Is she simply confirming that he's still there, still leading her home? He wants to turn, wants to offer comfort, wants to see her face and confirm that she's really there. But the god's condition chains him to forward motion, to trust without verification, to love without the confirmation that love desperately craves. I'm here, he says without turning, his voice carrying as much reassurance as he can manage. We're almost home. But even as he speaks, doubt gnaws at him. How does he know they're almost home? The passages all look similar. The journey seems endless. And the gods who granted this mercy are the same beings who have spent eternity perfecting the art of making hope into despair. The psychological pressure builds with each step. His neck aches from the effort of keeping his head facing forward. His shoulders tense with the constant struggle against the natural impulse to turn toward the person he loves most. Every sound behind him becomes magnified, analyzed, interpreted through the lens of desperate hope and growing fear. When she stumbles slightly, or seems to stumble, he nearly breaks the condition right there, his body starting to turn before his mind reasserts control. "Are you all right?" he asks the darkness ahead of them. "I'm fine," comes her response, but was there a tremor in her voice, a note of uncertainty? Or is his own anxiety creating problems where none exist, manufacturing crises that exist only in his imagination? The gods have created a situation where love becomes its own enemy, where caring too much becomes the source of failure. As they climb higher, the air begins to change. The oppressive weight of the underworld gradually lifts, replaced by something lighter, more familiar. He can taste the faintest hint of living air, not yet fresh, not yet clean, but no longer carrying the metallic tang of finality that permeates Hades' realm. This should be encouraging, but instead it makes the stakes feel more real, more immediate. They're getting close to success, which means they're also getting close to the point where failure would be most devastating. The passages begin to curve upward more steeply, and the stone underfoot changes from smooth palace floors to rougher, more natural surfaces. They're transitioning from the artificial architecture of divine law to the organic formations of the earth itself. Somewhere above them, how far above, lies the world of sunshine and growing things, the realm where love stories can have happy endings instead of serving as cautionary tales about the limits of mortal ambition. But the closer they get to salvation, the more unbearable the doubt becomes. Orpheus finds himself straining to hear every nuance of sound from behind him, analyzing each footstep, each breath, each rustle of fabric for confirmation that she's really there. The gods have turned his greatest strength, his acute sensitivity to sound and music, into an instrument of torture. Every ability that made him capable of charming death itself now contributes to his psychological torment. Chapter 10. The error of 1 second. The final stretch of the journey takes them through a tunnel that slopes steadily upward, and ahead, impossibly, wonderfully, terrifyingly, you can see light. Not the cold illumination of underworld flames, but real light, warm and golden and alive. It's the light of the world above. The promise of return. The proof that this impossible journey is actually succeeding. The sight of it should bring pure joy, but instead it creates the final, cruelest test of all. Orpheus can see the exit now, can see the boundary between the realm of death and the world of the living. It's so close he can taste the fresh air, can feel the warmth of actual sunlight beginning to touch his face. A few more steps, 10, maybe 20, and they'll both be safe. Eurydice will be fully alive again, returned to the world where she belongs, free from death's claim forever. The impossible will have been accomplished. Love will have conquered death, and their story will have the happy ending that mythology so rarely provides. But this is also the point where the psychological pressure reaches its peak. Behind him, he can still hear her footsteps, but they seem different now, lighter, perhaps, as if she's anticipating their return to life with the same joy that fills his own heart. Or are they lighter? Because she's fading? Because the god's promise was always an illusion? Because he's been walking alone this entire time, while they laughed at his gullibility? The doubt that has been building throughout the entire journey reaches a crescendo at the moment when faith should be strongest. He's literally steps away from success, close enough to salvation that he can see exactly where the underworld ends and life begins. But the god's condition requires him to maintain perfect trust for just a few more seconds, to resist the overwhelming urge to confirm what his heart desperately needs to know. "Orpheus," comes her voice from behind him, and there's something in it, excitement, perhaps, or relief, or fear. He can't tell which, and the uncertainty becomes unbearable. Is she celebrating their approaching success? Is she worried about something he can't see? Is she afraid that the gods will change their minds at the last moment? The not knowing becomes more painful than any physical torture ever devised. The light ahead grows stronger, more welcoming, more real. He can see the opening now, can see green grass and blue sky, and the promise of a world where they can be together without conditions, without divine oversight, without the constant presence of death as a third party in their relationship. Freedom is so close he can almost touch it. Happiness so near he can taste it like honey on his tongue. But the closer he gets to the surface, the more the silence behind him seems to stretch. When did he last hear her footsteps? Was it seconds ago, or has it been longer? The gods required that she follow him. But what if she's struggling with the transition from death to life? What if she needs help that he can't provide because he's not allowed to look? What if his strict adherence to their condition is causing her to suffer in ways he can't perceive? The love that drove him to challenge death itself now becomes the weapon that destroys his chance of victory. He cannot bear the thought that she might be in distress while he walks obliviously toward salvation. He cannot accept that his rigid following of rules might be causing harm to the person those rules are meant to save. The very depth of his devotion makes it impossible for him to prioritize abstract obedience over her immediate welfare. 3 steps from the surface, 2 steps from complete success, 1 step from the happy ending that has seemed impossible from the beginning. Orpheus makes the choice that will define their story forever. Unable to bear another second of uncertainty, driven by love too pure to coexist with doubt, he turns around. For one impossible moment he sees her. Eurydice is there, real and solid and beautiful, her face bright with joy and anticipation. She's reaching toward him with love and trust and absolute faith in his ability to save them both. Her eyes are full of the same devotion that drove him to challenge the gods themselves. The same perfect love that made their life together worth risking everything to reclaim. But even as he sees her, even as his heart floods with relief at the confirmation that she's real, that the gods kept their promise, that his faith was justified, he realizes his mistake. They haven't both reached the surface yet. He has stepped into the sunlight, but she is still technically within the realm of the dead. The god's condition required that they both emerge completely, and his moment of doubt has violated their agreement at the final, crucial second. You watch in horror as Eurydice begins to fade, her solid form becoming translucent, her warm flesh cooling to the temperature of memory. Her expression changes from joy to understanding to a sadness, so profound it seems to darken the sunlight itself. She knows what's happening, knows what his glance has cost them both, knows that this time the separation will be permanent. "Orpheus," she whispers, and her voice carries all the love they've shared, all the happiness they've lost, all the futures that will never be. "I don't blame you. How could I blame you for loving me too much to trust completely?" Her words are forgiveness and farewell combined, grace offered in the moment of ultimate loss. She reaches toward him one last time, but her hand passes through his like smoke, like dream, like the memory of touch. The god's justice is swift and absolute. She is pulled back into the underworld, returned to death's domain, lost to him forever. This time there will be no appeal. No second chance. No music beautiful enough to move hearts that have already shown their only mercy. The last thing he sees of her is her smile, not bitter, not angry, but infinitely sad and infinitely loving. She disappears into the shadows between worlds, leaving him standing alone in the sunlight that no longer brings warmth, holding emptiness where her hand should be, surrounded by the mockery of a salvation that came 1 second too late. Reflection final. The weight of impossible love, you find yourself standing with Orpheus in the cruel brightness of the world above, witnessing the aftermath of a love so perfect it destroyed itself, so pure it could not coexist with the doubt that makes us human. The sunlight that should celebrate their reunion instead illuminates the empty space where Eurydice should be standing, where happiness should be taking root, where love should finally be receiving its reward for refusing to accept the impossible. This is not a story about failure. This is a story about the terrible mathematics of loving someone more than you trust the universe to keep its promises. Orpheus did not fail because he was weak or faithless or unable to follow simple instructions. He failed because love, when it reaches its absolute pinnacle, becomes incompatible with the kinds of tests that gods devise to prove worthiness. The gods knew, of course. Hades and Persephone, who have spent eternity observing the ways mortals break under pressure, understood exactly what they were doing when they crafted their condition. They created a test that specifically exploited the deepest nature of love itself, the inability to remain passive when the beloved might be in distress, the impossibility of choosing abstract obedience over immediate care, the fundamental contradiction between loving completely and trusting blindly. They gave Orpheus a gift wrapped in psychological torture, mercy packaged with inevitable cruelty. They allowed him to succeed just enough to make failure devastating, to come close enough to salvation that losing it would be more painful than never having hope at all. This is divine justice at its most sophisticated, technically fair, procedurally correct, and emotionally catastrophic. But perhaps the real tragedy isn't that Orpheus looked back. Perhaps it's that the gods created a situation where looking back was inevitable, where love itself became the mechanism of loss, where the very devotion that moved them to mercy became the instrument of permanent separation. They turned his greatest strength into his greatest weakness, his deepest virtue into his fatal flaw. The ancient Greeks understood something about love that our modern romance narratives often miss, that the most beautiful emotions are also the most dangerous, that the feelings that make life worth living are also the ones most capable of destroying us. Love at its pinnacle becomes indistinguishable from madness. Devotion taken to its logical extreme becomes incompatible with survival. And the willingness to risk everything for another person inevitably leads to situations where everything is, in fact, lost. Orpheus's story echoes through every love that has ever pushed against the boundaries of possibility. It lives in every person who has ever loved someone so much that rational behavior becomes impossible, who has ever been willing to challenge cosmic law for the chance to hold on to happiness for just a little longer. It resonates in the part of us that understands that some of things are worth losing everything for, even when, especially when, we're almost certain to lose. The music that Orpheus played in the Underworld didn't just move the gods. It revealed something fundamental about the nature of beauty itself. True art, the kind that changes the world, always comes from places of impossible pain, transformed into something that transcends suffering. His lyre didn't just produce sound, it broadcast the exact frequency of love refined by loss, hope purified by desperation, beauty distilled from the raw materials of tragedy. In the end, Orpheus becomes something more than a failed hero or a tragic lover. He becomes proof that some attempts are worth making, even when they're doomed to fail. That some forms of devotion are so pure they justify themselves regardless of outcome. That some expressions of love are so perfect they become eternal, especially when they cannot be sustained in the mortal world. We tell this story not because it has a happy ending, but because it doesn't. We return to it again and again because it captures something essential, about what it means to love completely in a universe that makes complete love impossible. It reminds us that the most beautiful things in life are also the most fragile, that the emotions that make us most human are also the ones that cause us the deepest pain. As you drift towards sleep, carry with you not the tragedy of Orpheus's failure, but the beauty of his attempt. Remember that he succeeded in the only way that really matters. He loved so completely that it moved the gods themselves to tears, so purely that it temporarily rewrote the laws of reality, so perfectly that it became eternal, even though it could not be permanent. In the space between waking and dreams, where impossible things briefly become possible, perhaps Orpheus and Eurydice are together again, their love finally free from the conditions and tests that gods impose on mortals who dare to hope for too much. Perhaps in that realm where music becomes light, and love becomes the fundamental force that holds reality together, they dance to melodies that have no beginning and no end, surrounded by beauty that needs no justification beyond its own existence. The gods may control the boundaries between life and death, but they cannot control the stories we tell about love that refuses to accept those boundaries. They cannot diminish the beauty of devotion so pure it was willing to challenge eternity itself. They cannot make us forget that once, just once, someone loved so completely that even death himself was moved to weep. And in remembering that, we honor not just Orpheus and Eurydice, but every love that has ever been too beautiful for this world to contain, too perfect for reality to sustain, too true to survive the tests that existence places before all who dare to hope for impossible things. Sleep now, and dream of music so beautiful it could move mountains, love so pure it could soften the hardest hearts, and stories so true they become eternal, even when they cannot have happy endings. Dream of a world where looking back is not a failure, but a recognition that some things are worth losing everything to see one more time.